the reckoning.
This is amazing.
In the late 19th century, none other than the great Friedrich Nietzsche declared that God is dead, a profound statement not of triumph, but of tragedy. A recognition that the scaffolding of meaning once held firm by religious structure had collapsed beneath the growing weight of secularism and rationalism. Nietzsche foresaw that without a new foundation, humanity would spiral into nihilism or the blind pursuit of ideologies untethered from deeper significance. The existential vacuum left in the wake of God's death posed a spiritual and cultural crisis, one still deeply relevant today. Terence McKenna, nearly a century later, proposed a theory of novelty that appears almost incidentally to gesture toward an alternative. A cosmos not governed by entropy and decay, but pulled forward by a transcendental attractor, a point of ultimate complexity at the end of time toward which all life and consciousness evolve. Without invoking a deity or returning to orthodoxy, McKenna's vision reintroduces direction, significance, and pattern into the universe. It reframes human history not as a random drift in a meaningless void, but as a progressive unfolding of complexity and creativity, a drama with structure, if not a traditional script. Here, human beings are not the fallen children of a silent God, but the agents through which the universe explores its own capacity to become something new. This perspective does not demand faith in the metaphysical, nor blind adherence to revelation, but instead offers a kind of poetic rationalism, a mythos for the modern mind. Novelty theory doesn't so much resurrect God as it plants the seed for a new sense of sacredness, not in worship of a celestial authority, but in the recognition that becoming, transforming, innovating, connecting, is itself divine. In doing so, McKenna's subtle speculative metaphysics answers Nietzsche not with a counter-doctrine, but with a creative redirection, suggesting that the death of old gods might simply make room for new forms of awe. Yet, for as convincing as Terence McKenna may sound, there is a problem. One must ask, for example, whether novelty itself can bear the existential weight once carried by divinity. Is the draw toward complexity inherently redemptive? Or might it become another abstract horizon, always receding, never quite arriving? In embracing a theology of innovation, do we risk surrendering the critical posture necessary for genuine revolt against systems that conflate complexity with progress? After all, reformers often speak the language of evolution while reinforcing the very paradigms they claim to transcend. Perhaps the deeper threat is not meaninglessness, but the illusion of meaning too easily accepted, an aesthetic seduction that soothes the soul without truly awakening it. Keep that in mind as I play this clip for you of Terence in this episode of Legends of the Past and Future.
I want to go to this stuff about the strange attractor at the end of history.
Right.
I never ever, considered that notion that we are being pulled as opposed to simply just going on forever and ever. And that's for sure something that people are going to go, huh?
Well, in the 19th century, if you spoke of nature having a purpose, you were thought to be anti-evolution. because in the 19th century there was great pain to eliminate anything like preformation or teleology or purpose or God, all these things that they were trying to eliminate from evolutionary theory. And until very recently in scientific thought, the idea has been that events are pushed by the causal necessity embedded in the events which preceded them. In other words, if you ask the question, what is the most important event in terms of, or moment in terms of shaping this moment, the answer would be the moment just before this moment, because it hands on the energy, the space, the time. Recently, mathematicians have evolved what they call the notion of attractors, or strange attractors in some cases. And these are processes where a dynamic is not pushed by causal necessity from behind, but it's pulled by a point in the future. You could almost say, for example, if you release a ball bearing up near the rim of a bowl, that its attractor is the bottom of the bowl. And the ball bearing will roll down to the bottom, then halfway up the side, then up the side in shorter and shorter cycles until it finally comes to rest in the exact bottom of the bowl. Well, from the point of view of the new mathematics, the bottom of the bowl is a basin of attraction, and the ball bearing has fallen under its influence. So I have always doubted that evolutionary theory without purpose, without teleology, could produce as complex a world as we see around us in as short a time, 5 billion years, as the life of the Earth. It seemed more as though these processes were not just wandering across a flat genetic landscape. They were the process of biological evolution was actually being channeled between high walls. In other words, it could move. It had some motion this way, some this, but its forward direction was inevitable. And this is the idea of an attractor. That what the universe is doing is it is under the sway of what I call the transcendental object at the end of time. And that is this domain of hyperconnectivity, that it would be perfect novelty. And all nature aspires for this state of perfect novelty. You could almost say that nature abhors habit. And so it seeks the novel by producing various kinds of phenomena at every level in biology, chemistry, and society. And so there really is a purpose to the universe. Its purpose is this state of hypercomplexification in which all of its points become related to each other, become what mathematicians call cotangent. And it gives the universe the feeling of being imbued with a caring presence. It makes it appear as though nature is tending toward something, and it changes our own ethical and moral position in the universe. Because, science tells us that we're the products of a cosmic accident. We're at the edge of an ordinary galaxy in an ordinary star system, and we're damn lucky to be here. And that's it. That's our place, a very existential notion of our place in the cosmos. But if you take this other point of view, that process is under the influence of an attractor, and that the value the attractor is maximizing is novelty, then suddenly, for the first time in 500 years, human beings are moved back to the center of the stage, because we are the most novel thing on this planet. We are everything biology is, plus technology, language, politics, philosophy, art, so forth and so on. So suddenly human beings become important, not mere cosmic witnesses to a meaningless cosmos, but the cutting edge of a cosmos that glories in order and is moving toward higher states of order. And at the present moment, we are the carriers. Once it was the volcanic processes that shaped this planet. Once it was the life of the early oceans. Once it was the great dinosaurs. But today, humanity represents the cutting edge of complexity and this process of moving toward complexification. So it, without invoking God or any sort of myth, you give meaning to human life. What is man's purpose? To advance and preserve novelty. You know, this is an ethical position. It means you don't replace rainforests with pastures. You don't censor books. You don't lean on people who make gender choices different from yours. No, the purpose of being a human is to complexify reality even more, to hand on a more diverse, more complicated, more multifaceted universe to our children. And when this process of complexification reaches the omega point, it will fulfill, I believe, the expectations of all of these religions, but it will fulfill it in a mature, scientific, and universal way that these religions all lack, because they all reflect their parochial origins.